everyone. My name is Rachel Woodall.
And I'm David Moore.
I'm Michael Wilson.
And this is our Comp 431 extra credit assignment. What we did for this assignment was we had a trace route that determined 3 websites that we pinged for 60 times in 1 minute, and we collected that information in a day. We collected the average time and the losses. We did this 5 times throughout a single day. I did a bio.com.
And I did Amazon.com.
And I did westcoastuniversity.edu.
Bio.com is a search engine in China that started in the 2000s, and the name is 100 times in Chinese. This is one of the most used browsing websites in China right now, and the average times were a clear route where you could see times in the US versus times that hit in China. The first 3 routers were in the Chapel Hill area, going to the second 2 of 1 to 8 and that are in Durham, then leading to 3 routers, one hitting St. Louis, the other one is Dallas, Texas, and hitting New York, which is a main uni.com backbone that then leads all the way back to the Unicom backbone in China. Okay. This is about almost a 7,000 mile difference. So it would explain why the latency automatically picked up throughout those time frames, all after the 219 routers. With ping loss, there was a clear difference in ping loss. There was 2 main routers that had 100% ping loss, and I will go into detail why that could be later. But for taking out those 2 and just looking at the ones without the outliers, the number of ping loss throughout the day was fairly low in areas that were around Chapel Hill. Sometimes in the morning, depending on the path, it could have been busy around that time frame. However, you can see that it definitely died down later on for the day and had relatively low ping loss. But at times at 8 a.m., which would be 8 p.m. in China, there would a high ping loss, and at 11:30, which would be 11:30 p.m., would also have a high ping loss in China. Okay. And reasons for 100% ping loss could be because of traffic, either a bad router or even security putting up a firewall to stop denial of service attacks and make sure, which would make sense because both of those routers were in places of high traffic in major local cities. One being in China, having a major city, and the other one being in St. Louis.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So for my website that I investigated Amazon.com. Now, I want to start us off by taking a look at the actual route that my request to Amazon.com took throughout the country. What we're going to see is that the request took a very circuitous route, and I used a tool called IPLocation.com in order to map the IP addresses that I obtained using our traceroute method to actual latitudes and longitudes of those routers. So let's take a look at the path. First off, I want to explain that you can see from this data that our request starts out over there at ping number 1 here at UNC Chapel Hill, and we are ultimately going to end up at ping number 15 in Ashburn, Virginia. But the actual route that we took to get from point A to point B is actually quite interesting. You can see from this data that we start here, ping number 1 at UNC Chapel Hill, and go through several different routers on campus before moving to router number 4, which is a central server in Raleigh. After that, we go all the way over to Asheville, North Carolina, which is apparently where the NC Research and Education server lives. This is a server that serves all the educational institutions here in North Carolina that handles all outbound data. After that, though, quite strangely, the signal goes from hop 5 to hop 6 all the way in Wichita, Kansas, before then spending 4 different hops in a town called Pretty Prairie, Kansas, which is a extremely small town of only about 600 people. I was very surprised by the amount of time that was spent here in Kansas, of all places, until I discovered that AT&T actually has a major data center located in this town in Kansas. After we've done several hops through this data center, our path then moved over to Ashburn, Virginia at hop number 11, which happens to be an Amazon data hub. But even though I know that the Amazon.com actually does live here and will eventually be serviced by this same data hub to me, the user, our route isn't done yet. Instead, from hop number 11, we are actually going to move all the way around the country towards a separate Amazon data hub in Seattle, Washington, there at steps 12 and 13. I was very surprised about why this took place until I looked more into the architecture of Amazon and decided that the most likely reason for this jump was because once the signal goes to hop number 11, the signal is still unsure about where the best place to serve Amazon.com is. So it ultimately jumps all the way to a more main Amazon data hub over in Seattle to ultimately then decide that, yes, the Ashburn, Virginia location is the best place to serve me, Amazon.com. That's why by hop number 14, we go all the way back across the country towards Ashburn, Virginia, and eventually settle at hop number 15 to actually service the request. This path was extremely surprising to me to realize that to travel such a short distance from North Carolina to Virginia, we actually ended up going across the country twice for this one request to Amazon.com. So, now that we've talked about the very interesting route we just took, what if we went and answered the question of when is the best time to shop on Amazon? So, the way that we can answer this question is after going through and pinging all the various data, as Rachel talked about before. Pings nicely tell you the average delay for each set of pings on each router that you do. So from those average delays for each router that I got, for each router in a timeline, I was able to then average those delays and come up with the average delay rates of our pings for each time frame. So what does that actually look like? Well, this average of average delay data for each of the time frames that I pinged Amazon reveals that the shortest average delay occurs at about 8 a.m. in the early morning and also at 7:30 p.m. For accessing Amazon.com. That means that both of these times would in fact be the best bet for the fastest shopping experience because there would be the least amount of delay on the network. These times make sense primarily because at 8 a.m. Here at UNC's campus, most college students aren't really going to be up and about at 8 a.m., and most classes have not started, so the Chapel Hill network is not going to be very busy, and neither are most locations in Wichita, Pretty Prairie, or over in Seattle, considering those places are 1 to 3 hours behind us. The 7:30 p.m. being so close to the 8 a.m. is a little bit interesting. The best theory that I can come up with about why those two times are so similar in terms of delay is that at 7:30, 6:30, 5:30, these times across the country, the majority of people might be having dinner and thus not accessing the internet in such a heavy way, thereby lowering our packet delays for our requests. So now that we have looked at the actual route that our request took, as well as the average of delays to determine the best time to access Amazon, now let's take a look at the packet loss rates that are experienced throughout the trip to Amazon. Now we're going to look at a whole bunch of data right here, a chart that conveys quite a lot, but don't worry too much about the specifics because I just want to convey the main trend with this data, and that trend is what we're looking at here is a series of multicolored lines representing the various times in which I pinged the routers towards Amazon.com and got the packet loss rates for each router. What we can see here is that for every single ping route throughout the whole day, we experienced the same general trend of near 0% loss rates for the first several pings until at about pings 9, 10, 11, 12, there's a huge jump up to nearly 100% packet loss rates, which then lowers a little bit before finally cascading down to near 0% loss rate for the actual request to Amazon.com in Ashburn, Virginia. Now, this is really quite interesting and made me wonder which routers exactly are causing this jump towards a 100% loss. Well, it turns out that for every single jump to a 100% loss rate that we had, that was because these paths were going through the same 3 routers, these ones on screen. It turns out that these 3 routers are the ones that the hops go through at the Amazon Data Hub in Seattle. So why is it that these 3 routers are seemingly blocking all or mostly all of our pings to these routers? Well, a couple of different possibilities. The Seattle Data Hub may be using a NAT router to perform a technique called IP masquerading, in which the entire group of IP addresses within this data hub might all be sharing a single public IP address for the whole system. By doing this allows legitimate requests to Amazon to go through, but items like pings, which are not actually asking for specific data from the site, would be denied. There's also the possibility that the Seattle Data Hub is simply using a firewall to blacklist incoming pings. In either case, these methods of blocking pings help protect the Data Hub from possible denial of service attacks, as Rachel mentioned with her servers in China that were blocking her pings. Thank you.
And to wrap this up, I'm going to talk about data coming from West Coast University. This is located in Los Angeles, California, and has around 1,500 undergrad students, and is also home to a large number of grad students as well. And this, being in LA, is about 2,500 miles from the UNC campus. So our packets have to go pretty far to get there. So now to talk about ping loss. Overall, our packets did not lose, or our pings did not often get dropped, with at most losing 3 total in one 60 ping, session. But this translates to a maximum of about 5% loss. And you can see here pictured, it's the loss in total for each hop on the router at each time frame that the routers were pinged at. And you can see here there were a few average times where it would, or a few average routers where it would spike, like one number 17 near the end, or number 16 or number 6. There would be a lot of packet loss there. But in comparison to some of the other data we looked at, it's hardly any at all. Which then brings me to the average delay. So for this, the delay is in milliseconds, and it gradually increases as the day goes on, and is even greatest at night, which I found a little bit odd because this was pinged around 11:30 at night, and I didn't expect that much network traffic, but it sort of follows this trend almost exactly, where it increases as the day goes on. This having the exception of maybe the first couple of routers, where, especially the first one, where it remains pretty much the same, and then 2 and 3 where especially the evening and the mid-afternoon tests are about the same. And just to make some conclusions about what we've learned here is that the morning is the best time to access this website and presumably other websites in the Los Angeles area. And although we did see a little bit of packet loss on this, or on the morning trials here, it was still a very low delay time. And I believe that this could largely be due to like the number of students using here and in California, and also just because of the time delay, as around 8 a.m. here, it would actually get earlier in the day over there, so it would even less people would probably be awake and using the internet. And conversely, at night, we saw the largest amount of network traffic. And there could be a handful of reasons for this, just as a lot of people like to stream video and movies at night. There was also games for the NCAA basketball tournament happening while these trials were being done. And that would increase network traffic even more, because as we've looked at in class, streaming video is one of the more taxing processes for a network, and with a lot of people trying to stream it, it would definitely slow down any network. And yeah, that's about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.